these talks are in essence focused on the self-induced and self-devised effort in our quest toward the art of perfectibility. And before we start, I'd like to read a short intro from the Bhagavad Gita, and that is from chapter 4. And Krishna says there, "Even though myself, unborn, of changeless essence, and the Lord of all existence, yet in presiding over nature, which is mine, I am born but through my own Māyā, the mystic power of self-ideation, the eternal thought in the eternal mind. I produce myself among creatures, O son of Bharata, whenever there is a decline of virtue and an insurrection of vice and injustice in the world. And thus I incarnate from age to age for the preservation of the just, the destruction of the wicked, and the establishment of righteousness. Whoever, O Arjuna, knoweth my divine birth and actions to be even so, does not upon quitting his mortal frame enter into another, for he entereth into me." So whether there is a there or not, friends, is something you will find out after listening to these talks on illusion. And as always, at the end of the talks, we will open up for questions from our participants. And as usual, please keep your mics muted during the talks. Our first talk will be given by Vikash on the topic of illusion or Māyā. Please go ahead, Vikash.
Thank you, Pierre. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So welcome all. Namaste, good morning, afternoon, evening, based on whichever time zones you're located in. Today's talk is focused on illusion, and we will see what is illusion, how it is everywhere, persistent, and how we are continuously being influenced by it. We'll also look into how we can use it as a tool to achieve self-actualization. And in the second part of this talk, we'll see more practical ways to achieve the same. So I have 25 minutes in which I have packed a lot of ideas. Request you to focus, make some notes, ask questions at the end. Now, the interesting thing to notice is that most of us, as we speak and discuss in this meeting, we are in different time zones. And the whole meeting is actually happening in our mind. In this context, the definition of time as provided in Secret Doctrine comes to the mind, which states as follows. Time is only an illusion produced by the succession of our states of consciousness as we travel through the eternal duration. And it does not exist where no consciousness exists, in which the illusion can be produced, but lies asleep. So this means that there are definitely different states of consciousness, and there is eternal duration. However, in order to create this illusion, we need consciousness. So unless and until consciousness is there, we cannot create the illusion. So there is no illusion unless there is a being to make it or feel its effects, which is similar to saying there is no karma unless there is a being to make it or feel its effects. So what is eternal duration then? What we understand is that eternal duration is the superset. It's beginningless, it's endless. And time is just a sliver of this eternal duration, where there is being to feel its effects. Now let's try to understand how this illusion is created. So let's say this circle represents all our states of consciousness. And why are we just showing one circle? We know that we are sevenfold, but we are showing one circle because everything is in coordination. And all these vehicles or upadhis or our principles are in coordination also. So as we speak, we are having our consciousness all across these upadhis at the same time. But we are currently in an awake state, which is also known as Jagrat in Sanskrit. And we are awake, we are talking to each other, we are aware now. But when we go to sleep or a dream state, we go to Swapna. Then we are not aware of our awakening state or what happens in the awake world. And then we go into deep sleep, which is Shushupti. And similarly, we touch upon the fourth, which is also known in Sanskrit as Turiya. So we note here that all through the awareness is always there. Whatever be the situation in life, and whether we are awake or we are sleeping, the awareness is always there. However, we may or may not be self-aware. We are aware of all the situations in life. We are aware continuously. And when we sleep, this same awareness is illuminating the world of our dreams. We may not be self-aware that we are dreaming, but the experience of dream and the awareness of this experience continues. Because the moment we come out of sleep, we are aware we came out of sleep. We are aware that we had a very deep sleep. We had a very rested sleep. When we are in deep sleep, we lose all our awareness of names and forms. But yet still awareness exists. Here, deep sleep is the experience, if you may think, of absence of objects of awareness. Another point to note is that the objects of our experience and awareness keep changing. But from childhood till now, our awareness never changes. So this awareness is always there, changeless and constant. But there is a playground of illusion out there. This awareness is what makes us experience, since without it, we cannot experience anything. This awareness is not subject to birth or death or any situation. We are this awareness. So from this perspective, our awareness traverses different states. And Turiya is the sort of a container, you may say, from this perspective, wherein arises and disappears all other states. So all is but a play of this one consciousness. This is a very important point to keep in our mind while we proceed further in our talk. So whatever plane our consciousness may be acting in, both we and the things belonging to that plane are real for the time being, are only realities. Hence, another aspect to note is that in each of these states, a different portion of our mind comes into action. Only then we are able to comprehend and understand. Now let's see how this particular illusion is created. This illusion is created because of the gunas which are present. Now we'll not go much into this particular slide, but it's an important slide to understand what gunas are. So if you see, the important idea is that Prakriti or matter, it is eternal. In whatever be the state of the manifested or unmanifested universe, Prakriti is always there. Now the state of Prakriti where this cyclical projection or activity of a universe has not yet started is known as Para Prakriti or the higher Prakriti, which you can see on the top of the screen. And this is same as the unmanifested state, Avyakta. In this state, Prakriti has no attributes. In fact, the attributes are there, but they are in latent state. And this is known as Shuddha Sattvic state. They are in equilibrium, so to say. And at the time of manifested universe, when we have third logos, we have duality and various permutations and combinations of gunas arise in all different layers and layers of the differentiated universe. Rajas provides the impelling force for sattva and tamas to form the organs of cognition, action, subtle essence that is known as tanmatras and mahabhutas, which are the elements. So let's keep in mind only one idea here, that there is gunas in Prakriti in a manifested state, and there are three gunas. So the biggest illusion is about us ourselves. Who are we? Who am I? And we understand that everything is sevenfold, then this must be a sevenfold illusion. So another thing we understand is that great breath is the source and origin of all individual consciousness and supplies a guiding intelligence in the vast scheme of cosmic illusion. So great breath actually assumes the character of pre-cosmic ideation, and from pre-cosmic ideation we get cosmic ideation, and from cosmic ideation, when it focuses in a particular vehicle, it results in consciousness. So let's say this bright circle represents Ātman, our highest principle. And the light from there, when it shines or rather reflects to the next level of differentiation, we get Buddhi. And so forth, we get Manas. That same light reflected, we get Kāma, and we get Prāṇa, and we get the astral. But if you note that bright light, that bright circle as it's going down, it is getting dimmer and dimmer because that original light is getting reflected. And after 6 or 7 reflections, what do you get? Any guess? Most probably we'll get something which is equivalent to a shadow. So that's why our physical in voice of silence is known as a shadow. Thy shadows live and vanish, that which in thee shall live forever, that which in thee knows, for it is knowledge. So we see how that which lives in thee forever is the reality, but this illusion is created of all these vehicles. And an interesting thing happens that when this cosmic ideation is focused in one of the upadhis and results in consciousness, it also creates a side effect. Ahamkara is created. And in the physical body, the ahamkara is like, I am this body. You associate yourself with this body. And then with the Kāma, it is like, my name is so-and-so, this is the story of my life, these are my problems, this is my ambition, these are my desires, this is how I'm going to plan my life. And then your Manas says, I am the thinking person, I am I. And then comes Buddhi, I am. And then the truth, the reality of you is I-ness or beingness, which we forget because of this illusion which is created. And then we need to realize that, as we discussed about gunas, on each plane of differentiation, there are gunas. This is just a representation of how the gunas are. There could be various permutation, combination percentages. But because of this, the separateness is created in our mind. And then we realize that we are this body or we are this mind. But when we reach our consciousness to the level of Ātman, it is homogeneous, as we discussed, nirguna, undifferentiated. That's the only reality. But then, because of this ahamkara, we think, oh, my Atma and your Atma, there is nothing like my Atma and your Atma. So this is an important point we should keep in mind. There is only one Atma. And that's why we need to think about on these lines. If we are none of these bodies, and if we are Atma, and there is no my Atma and your Atma, then what's going on? Let's keep this thought at the back of our mind. Now we'll consider some few seed thoughts. The incognizable cause does not put forth evolution, whether consciously or unconsciously, but only exhibits or rather projects periodically different aspects of itself to the perception of finite minds. Who are these finite minds? We all are the finite minds. So you see, at a macroscopic scale, at the scale of the universe, solar system, the galaxies, the cluster of galaxies, or even beyond, this is all a projection, periodical projection. The universe is called, with everything in it, Māyā, because all is temporary. We see the worlds come, the suns come, the planets come, the moons come, and they go away. There is a collapse of the nebulae, and even the galaxies, they disappear and then they appear. But all this teaches the hidden science is but temporary reflection of the eternal ideal prototype in divine thought. So nothing is permanent except the one hidden absolute existence which contains in itself the noumenon of all realities. The existences belong to every plane of being up to the highest Dhyan Chauhans, are in degrees of the nature of shadows cast by a magic lantern on a colorless screen. But all things are relatively real, for the cognizer is also a reflection, and the things cognized are therefore as real to him as himself. Whatever reality things possess must be looked for in them before or after they have passed, like a flash through the material world. But we cannot cognize any such experience directly, so long as we have sense instruments which bring only material existence into the field of our consciousness. So what do? Hence, we need spiritual senses to perceive the true nature of reality. But how is this illusion produced on a microscopic scale, on our day-to-day world? We understand we are sevenfold. We saw that how each of our principle is an illusion. But what's happening in the real world? Let's see this. So here I have something known as a Kanisa triangle. It's a triangle with the apex down, and three sides are there. If I would rub off the middle points of these three sides, we will get something like this. So we have in effect three angles here, and the middle point is erased. And then remember, we used to play these video games. Pac-Man was the earliest one. So if I bring a Pac-Man figure in one of the side, and another Pac-Man on another side, another Pac-Man on another side, suddenly what happens? Our mind sees an invisible triangle. How did this triangle come? Actually, there is no triangle there. So what's happening here is what we need to understand. So we have different parts, the angles and the Pac-Man figure, which we have organized in a particular manner. And we can see this triangle magically appear in our mind. This is known as dependent origination. Triangle originates depending on certain arrangements, certain chain of cause and effects. So there are three levels of dependent origination happening here. Cause and effect relationship, parts and collection relationship, and the idea of triangle is merely imputed by a mind, wherein the mind wraps the parts and collection into a name and a form, and perceptions are formed. So the triangle-ness is the preconceived idea in our mind, which is fulfilled by this arrangement of parts and collection and whole, and the triangle is seen by a mind's eye. So let's see actually an animation and understand how this is happening. Let me play this. So we saw that what appears to our mind is based on our previous ways of thinking about the triangle object and preconceived notions, what we had in our mind, the habitual mental patterns, and this forms a bias. Now, here we have a different kind of illusion which is created in real life, and it is known as Edelson's checker shadow illusion. Some of you might be knowing about it. Now, on the right, we have a green cylinder, and on the light source is behind that, and it is standing on a checkerboard, there is a gray check or a gray square marked as A and an off-white square marked as B. And I think all of us agree that both the colors of A and B are different. But actually, in real life, that's not the situation. Both of them are gray. So how do we understand what's going on here? Let's see this particular animation. So we saw how the Māyā is actually influencing us in real world, and this is just a waking state. Just imagine if we are in a sleep or a deep sleep state, and in the astral world, everything is reflected in the reverse direction. So, and there are layers upon layers upon layers. So just imagine that how amazing or fantastic is the um, nature of illusion and how our mind gets tricked. So how do we come out of the influence of Māyā? But in order to understand that, we'll have to understand certain more ideas. Māyā or illusion is an element which enters into all finite things for everything that exists as only a relative, not an absolute reality. Everything we perceive is just a passing expression of that one consciousness. Since the appearance which the hidden nomina assumes for an observer depends upon his power of cognition. So that means that the perception of the world and everything in it depends on perceptive capabilities of our mind. And everybody will have their own perception and have their own understanding of mind. But if there were no mind, the world would not exist. It will suddenly disappear. Now, mind, as provided by Secret Doctrine, is the name or label given to the sum of states of consciousness grouped under thought, will, and feeling. And we'll see what does this mean. But when perceiving the world, we are coloring it with our own preconceived ideas based on our existing tendencies. And these tendencies are also known as skandhas or bias. We'll look into that. But how the Māyā with karma and skandhas is actually binding us to the samsara of life and death. We are continuously getting born and living our life, and at appropriate time leaving this body and then doing this again and again. So in this context, let's see thoughts. Thoughts are objects in the plane of mind. They are also, you can think of as entities. Now thoughts actually, when they arise as objects in the mind, give rise to desires due to grasping, that is attachment based on delusion of separateness, and desires arise. Desires propel will propels action, and then thoughts further are associated with feelings, and feelings are again related to your desires. Feelings can be subdivided into your sensations and further subdivided into emotions. All this together you can label it as Kāma. And as we saw in the previous slide, what is mind? We'll see that. So thoughts are again associated with your elementals, and they can form again a skandha. So thought, feeling, and will. Mind is the sum of states of consciousness grouped under thought, will, and feeling. Now, one very big mistake we do, we think brain is our mind and mind is brain. But brain is on a physical plane and mind is on a mental plane. And when we point to somebody's mind, my mind or your mind or Mr. X mind, it is the moment we point, it is that moment mind only. Because as you see, feelings, sensations, emotions, thoughts are dynamic. They every moment change. So we call it as a mind streams. So every sliver or every instance of this collective group which you are seeing on the screen together is the mind, which has an instance every microsecond. All these microsecond instances connected together becomes your mind stream. Another important thing of mind to note is in this context of self-actualization is that mind has a higher ego, individuality, and has a lower ego, personality. But it's the same mind. These are two different aspects or facets of the mind. But we are stuck with our desires, as we see on the left-hand side, with Kāma, which pulls our personality, our mind in different directions, ambitions, achievements, so on and so forth. And that's where the Kāma manas is acting more. But if we destroy our Kāma manas, sort of not have selfish thoughts and try to raise our thoughts and work more with our higher ego, then our Buddhi Manasic aspect can be more and more activated. So in effect, in the context of self-actualization, we are what our deep driving desire is. As our deep driving desires, so is our will. As our will, so is our deed. As our deed is, so is our destiny. So a very important slide we'll cover quickly now. And this relates to how actually in real time, or rather run time, this is happening in our system. And when I say a system, it's our sevenfold elusive system. So we have the five senses or sense organs. Each is associated with its own consciousness. So there's a contact point with the external world, and physical sensors are there. Eye sensor, nose sensor, so on and so forth. And each has associated eye consciousness. And these become the Rupa skandhas. Now, these interact via electrical signals, as you may be knowing, with brain consciousness, and there is a point of contact. And brain consciousness somehow, magically, we don't know how, using astral currents or via forehead, connects with mind. And mind is the Raja of the senses. Why? Because it's the sixth sense. And here you note that if we apply the concept of seer and the seen, the object for brain consciousness is sense consciousness. And the seer is brain consciousness. Similarly, the object for mind consciousness is brain consciousness. And then we have the skandhas of samkara in your mind on the mental plane. But buddhi, the seventh sense, on buddhic plane, is observing the mind. And Ātman, the unchanging at the level of the ultimate reality, is the witness of all. So we see that one thought, when it's provided to the mind, feelings arise, emotions arise, that is Vedana skandha. And you see every place there are these skandhas involved. Some people who are not aware of skandhas, you can replace that term with tendencies. And that's where in runtime we have these important moments wherein we need to make moment of choice, decisions. We need to take some real critical steps in our mind to do this or that. But this all happens with being aware of all the different phenomena which is taking place in our system. But the important other aspect is that how illusion or the gunas, which are also related with skandhas, at each level, at each layer, they are changing the information, and we are then forced to take some choices in our life based on this. Hence, we need to be mindful. More on this will be in the second talk. Another important aspect is that there are 7 scales of consciousness and 7 aspects of mind which we should be mindful of. So, these were the practical things. Now, the other part is that the real person or thing does not consist solely of what is seen at any particular moment, but is composed of the sum of all its various changing conditions. As we discussed about the mind stream, so is this particular statement that everything is dynamic, there is nothing permanent. Thoughts are objects which are arising in a mind, they have a life, they are dying. Feelings, emotions, physical body, all are vehicles, and everything in the macrocosm and the microcosm, everything is dynamic. This is Maya. So what is the reality and how do we understand it? We saw how our minds, based on preconceived ideas and colored with skandhas or tendencies, perceive the world. But whatever appears to us on whichever plane of consciousness, realm, or world on which we might be aware is actually a temporary passing flash, a reflection. Now, the important point is the substratum of all this never changes. Like when we watch a movie, all things happen on the screen. We see people, places, objects come and go. But the surface of the screen never changes. That substratum is the true reality. And our true reality, due to false association with our body, mind, etc., is based on the skandhas, and at the same time is carried away by labeling temporary objects with name and form, and we get attached to those objects. There is grasping happening, there is desires which are arising, and we run after those throughout our life. If we truly see everything in the right perspective, we will realize that all forms, all people, objects, everything, whichever is in our field of awareness, arises and then disappears. They are just a passing expression of that, the one consciousness, and they arise and disappear in the field of that one consciousness itself. And each one of us, our reality is that, which means there is only one reality, whether you call it Ātman, that, or Parabrahman or Brahman. Rest all is a holographic projection in our own field. Hence, which also means that in effect, once we realize to whatever degree this reality, in effect, we all are one. So only the liberated spirit is able to faintly realize the nature of the source, whence it sprung, and whether it must eventually return. As the highest Dhyani Chauhans, however, can but bow in ignorance before the awful mystery of the Absolute. So, in this context, we are here, and how do we reach to the self-actualization? We have to work with illusion, and use it as a tool to understand illusion and understand our real nature. Because if real nature doesn't have a diagrammatically opposite, or if there is no duality, then we will not be able to understand all the flavors. But here we need to focus on what our true nature is, which in turn will lead to what is the nature of reality. There is still hope. And in our second talk, we'll get more answers. So friends, thank you very much.
Thank you, Vikash.